Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Thomas Richards. We're recording this, so I'm going to officially speak into this so that we can process it afterwards. This is ACP 2017 Chromopolis presented by the Salem-Keizer team. So I'm going to turn it over to them. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so before we get started, if you'd like to move forward, there is not a single person up here that will be offended if you find that this is not for you and you stand up and leave. So if that's the reason you picked the back 40, you are invited to move forward. We don't throw anything, and the splash zone is really only the first row. This is Chromopolis. It is our story of mass deployment of 14,000 Chromebooks last summer in 43 days. And so we came up with a lot of different working titles for it, things like While They Were Out, 42 Days of Cardboard Kingdoms, Turning a Mountain into a Mouse. All of those things happened in this really, really short period of time. The other thing to be aware of is that last summer when we did this after a full Windows 10 deployment throughout the entire school district. So that's what we spent our June doing, was Windows 10 rollout in the entire school district. So, we only, like to do the impossible twice a year, and so we decided to do both of those things at the same time. Briefly, I'm Kathy Etchemendy. I am the support supervisor for Salem-Keizer Public Schools Technology Department, and I'll let these folks introduce themselves as well.
And I'm Cindy Darden, technical team lead for the support side of Salem-Keizer.
And I'm another Cindy, and I am involved in the tech integration.
And I'm Mark Ballou. I'm actually a supervisor over enterprise development, but I was the lead on this project for the deployment and processing of the Chromebooks.
So we have a department motto: one team, one TIS, one purpose. And this was really one of our first opportunities to really throw this into action and really live out this motto. It had been the working motto for the year, but this really gave us a chance to embody that idea. So really what we're going to be talking about today is the full cycle of the process and how this project came to life, what we ended up driving this, and how we were really going to be addressing some sustainability issues. And the sustainability problem that we were really trying to answer in this is our fleet of 16,000 workstations has an average age of 8 to 12 years. And through this Chromebook deployment, we were trying to jump ahead 2 years worth of PC workstation replacement cycle. So today we're going to be talking about the purchasing and planning that went into this project, the receiving and deploying, and it really was a very finely choreographed circus, as well as the next steps in sustainability to bring this full cycle. A little bit of background that goes into this project for how it came into being is, like I mentioned, we had an aging fleet of student workstations. Our average age was 8 to 12 years. We are not quite done with this project. We are actually still getting ready to pull some of those workstations, but we'll talk more about that later. We also had a barrier previously to an adequate implementation of any kind of classroom set of devices. We went from 800 in the entire district access points to over 2,000 in the school year prior to that. And if we hadn't done that first, this was already destined to fail. So we needed to remove that access issue. The other part of that is we took everything to the AC wireless protocol off of N, which also made this a lot easier to sell to the staff, especially because when you're taking a classroom set in, on one access point, it was much easier to handle. And then another thing that we'll be talking to you about is some of the equity in the schools of access to technology. At Salem-Keizer Public Schools for a long time, it was site-based managed by the individual school and principal as to how they wanted to spend their money and if they wanted to buy technology at all. So some of our more affluent schools with technology savvy and interested principals had some really good student to internet-enabled device types of scenarios. And there were others, as you'll find out soon, that really had extremely poor access, and we really even struggled with testing. So the first thing we needed to do was go into a little bit of a vendor selection process. And most of this was actually happening at the end of last school year, in the April and May time period. And so we looked at 4 vendors for the Chromebook devices themselves. Dell, Asus, CTL, and HP. We do have a year's worth of purchasing of HP devices. And after that year, they were looking pretty rough. We ultimately ended up settling on Dell as our device of choice after doing some comparisons. And some of the biggest contributing factors to that were Dell was our current and continues to be our current vendor of choice for workstations and laptops. They had just beefier hinges. They just seemed to be sturdier devices. We had a really good working rapport with the customer service and the repair plan, and we were familiar with the warranty process. If you're going to get 14,000 Chromebooks, I highly suggest you also plan for storing and charging those Chromebooks. You probably came up with that one on your own. We ultimately ended up taking a look at Bretford, Anthro, and Anywhere carts. And the Bretford cart was the winner in our mobile cart solution, or our mobile storage solution. Some of the contributing factors for that were the 36-slot cart. They were not the easiest to wire, but they were harder to tip over. That was a scenario that was going on at the particular time. And then we settled on the Anywhere cart 12-unit countertop device or storage locker for our smaller in-classroom device. For purchasing all of these, the Bretford carts we did purchase directly from Dell, so they were the reseller there, and OETC is our vendor of choice for the Anywhere carts, or the Anywhere cabinets. And so this was really one of the areas where I had the most opportunity to interact with this project. I got to hand off a lot of this work too, though. So what Cindy Darden is going to talk to you about a little bit is some of the equity issues that we were looking forward to fixing in this project.
And are still fixing. So this chart represents every one of our schools in our district. And our larger circles on here are our schools that have the smallest student to device or device to student ratio. So they have the most devices in their schools.
Other way around.
Yeah, they have the most devices. Because then they're yeah.
Anywho. Anyway, carry on. You'll see the numbers in a second.
We've got numbers. Hold on. So there was a formula created where we wanted to try to get every school to around a 2-to-1 ratio. And as you can see, we had a lot of disparity here where we had some schools all the way up to almost 12 devices and some, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So they had 12 students per device, and we had some that had the 2.78 as low as. So in this scenario here, both these schools got about 216 Chromebooks, but in the second phase of the process, we will remove 165 computers from this school and will not remove any from the red school, and bring those into alignment so that they both go down, and they're both going to end at about 2.3. So that is kind of where we're at now. Is we couldn't go in and remove devices right off the bat. Teachers, admins hadn't really had these devices in their hands. There needed to be some further steps, and they needed to really get invested in the project and taking away their computers and the resources they currently had would have been a really negative impact on the schools. So we're just now starting that process and having those conversations with the principals and letting them identify. We're giving them their number, and then they're identifying which computers they would like for us to remove during this summer cycle. So that's about where we're at with this project.
So as Cindy mentioned, improving that student-to-laptop ratio is really the name of the game. That's what we're trying to do with this project. Excuse me. So myself, as the lead for the project for processing this, I'm going to go into more of the logistics, a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of how we did this and how we accomplished this. A little bit of background about myself. I've been in the Salem-Keizer School District for a little less than a year. I arrived at the school district on July 5th. That was my first day. And so you'll see as we start seeing the dates, that's pretty close to when we started our Chromebook deployment. So I came into the director's office and he said, "Hey, guess what? You're going to deploy 14,000 Chromebooks." And I said, "Oh crap, that's a lot." I came from a district in Alaska. We did a lot of deployment of computers, but we were on the scale of like 1,000. Now, granted, we were putting these in totes and sending them to different villages because our villages in Alaska weren't connected by roads, so we had to send things in planes. So I have a little bit of background about logistics and what that looks like, but this was a scale that I hadn't seen before. So it was an exciting opportunity for me to do this, and I was eager and excited to get to work when I found out how many Chromebooks we would be deploying in the summer. So looking at how we did that, first we kind of broke it down by school. How many devices and carts and cabinets were going to go to each school. We just built a simple spreadsheet of where everything was going to go. You kind of see a sampling of that here on the slide. Weddell Elementary School, 3 carts, 3 cabinets, 144 devices. And we went through each school and developed that chart. 14,000 Chromebooks is how many we deployed. But when we kind of did the math, we didn't want a cart to be partially full or a cabinet partially full. We wanted everything to be full. So when we did all those calculations, we came up with 13,536 Chromebooks that would actually be deployed. And that worked out really well because that way you kind of have a few extra that you can use in case there's some dead on arrivals. You can just swap those out. We had some sites that may wanted to purchase their own extra Chromebooks, so we had a little bit of a pool for all that. So it was really a good fit for that. And like we said, the name of the game is just to increase the equity for computer access to the students by reducing that student-to-laptop ratio. So that was the big piece with that. As I mentioned, new to the scene, to Salem-Keizer. So as soon as I found out I was doing this project, I started to go into research mode. How are we going to do this? We've got 14,000 Chromebooks coming. We're going to be going to a warehouse where all these Chromebooks, carts, and cabinets are going to be received, and I'm doing measuring. I'm measuring the size of the aisles. I'm measuring how big these carts are going to be because I'm thinking how many can we fit in the aisle? How many people can we fit in the aisle? How are we going to do this assembly line? A lot of things like that are running through my mind as I'm going through this. So I did a lot of that preparation work to understand the constraints that we had to work with to help this be successful. In doing that, I reached across and met with our facilities leadership team, who was in charge of the warehouse. We work for technology, and so we had to start to have those kind of conversations with them. How are we going to work in the warehouse? Because that was really the best place for us to do the processing, right there in the warehouse where the Chromebooks, carts, and cabinets were going to be received, and we could do all our processing there. But that was a new relationship that we had to kind of forge with the facilities supervisors, with the director there. It's something that we hadn't done a lot of, so we had to figure that all out. And as we talked about it, as we looked at the warehouse, as we kind of looked at the lay of the land and thought about both storage and working in the warehouse, kind of decided that we would take one large aisle of the warehouse and we would dedicate that to processing the Chromebooks. We could set up an assembly line and we could process these Chromebooks quickly. And then the rest of the warehouse, we'd leave to the warehouse team to store, our extra Chromebooks, our extra carts, our extra cabinets, and they could bring them into that aisle that they had dedicated for us to do the processing. So that's kind of how we worked it out with the warehouse. About 90 feet was how long the aisle was. So it was a pretty good space for us to work in. And so that was a key relationship that we had to forge with that team and work outside our department, which was a great opportunity. And as you'll see from when we get into more of how that worked, it was a great end product. So we were excited about that. As we were working with the warehouse team, there were a couple concerns that they had about processing these Chromebooks, carts, and cabinets. And their concern was mostly with how we were going to receive it. They weren't keen on all these 14,000 Chromebooks just getting dropped on their warehouse. So they asked, could we possibly divide the shipment into 4 separate shipments? And so that was the first thing that we did. And then the other thing was they had some experiences before with 2 semis coming into the warehouse to drop off large pallets and large loads, and it causes confusion and problems. So if there was any way we could try to negotiate with our vendors, Dell and Bretford, so that doesn't happen, that would be greatly appreciated. So those were kind of 2 things that we were trying to work with them to make sure that didn't happen. And then finally, we wanted to be sure that we had clearly communicated with the 25 to 30 people that we were going to have working in the warehouse what the safety expectations were. This wasn't going to be the typical work that we were doing in technology. We were going to be in a warehouse where there was going to be machinery running, shelves with heavy pieces of equipment. We wanted to be safety conscious. Certain areas of the warehouse were going to be off limits, places that we couldn't go. And so we were going to have students there. We were going to have developers there, coders, technicians, supervisors. So we needed to clearly communicate safety while working in this warehouse, because this was a relationship that we had created, a good, positive relationship. We wanted to make sure that we could continue if we ever needed to do some processing in the warehouse again, that it would be a positive experience. So we were sure to outline those procedures when we were working in the warehouse. We had daily check-in procedures. The warehouse needed to know where everybody was, who was in the warehouse. So we had those daily check-in procedures. The other big one was traffic flow. And so with traffic flow, we needed to have clear paths to the restroom, clear paths to the break room, clear paths to come in and out of the warehouse where we were working in that aisle. And then clear path to, it happened, the first aid kit. We didn't have any major mishaps, but we did have some scrapes, cuts, minor cuts, that kind of thing. And of course, we can't have people bleeding and things like that all over. So, having those clear paths established and then those clear areas of the warehouse that are off limits was key to being successful. And then finally, if you haven't had the opportunity to work in a warehouse in August, it is great. The weather is great. So it's important to stay hydrated. We went through a lot of water working in the warehouse. So that's an important thing to remember too, depending on when you may be doing a large-scale deployment, is to have that water ready for people to have and to take breaks. We had 25 to 30 people working in that area. They're cutting cardboard. They're taking cardboard out to the recycle bin. They're on their backs configuring cables in a cabinet. So there's a lot of work, a lot of movement. So breaks were necessary just to give people a little time to catch their breath. Talk about how great we're doing and how fun this is, that kind of stuff. So great experience with the warehouse, but some things to be aware of. So taking a little bit of step back and talking about the receiving. I mentioned that the warehouse kind of had 2 things that they wanted us to key in on when we were planning our shipments of Chromebooks. They wanted to make sure that we could divide the shipments up so they didn't all come to the warehouse at once, and then try to avoid those 2 semis coming at once. So what we did is we divided up our entire shipment into 4 shipments. And the colors are a little off. I'm calling this green, this is blue, and this is red, and this is amber. So 4 different shipments that we grouped things in, and roughly each shipment is about 3,500 Chromebooks, 85 carts. And the idea there is, when we were thinking about deploying this, we wanted to get the carts first and then receive the Chromebooks to the warehouse. Not on the same day, but to receive them on the carts first. And the reason for that was when the carts were already there and ready to go, we could start unpackaging Chromebooks and get them directly into the carts. We wouldn't have Chromebooks kind of loosey-goosey around in the warehouse waiting for carts to be put in. So that's kind of why we wanted the carts first. That was the idea. Now, anytime you're doing logistics and shipping, right, things happen, things change, things don't quite work out the way you think. So this is our plan, planned time to order things, planned time for them to arrive. The first challenge we had in our plan was when we started talking to vendors. We started talking to them pretty early in the game. It turns out that the Brentford carts weren't able to ship on the timeline that we were thinking originally. So we had to go ahead and push that order back later than we thought. And with that, we decided to actually, on this green shipment, get the Chromebooks first. As you can see, we ordered on the 14th, ordered on the 22nd, and they arrived on the 22nd and the 26th. Chromebooks first. We just decided to do that for this one so we could get the Chromebooks, kind of see how that process worked, have them, and then we'd go ahead and wait till the Chromebooks came, or the carts came, before we did our processing. So that's how it worked out on the green one. At that point, we told Brentford, hey, just ship the carts. Ship them in groups as soon as you can, because they had needed a little bit more lead time to get the carts out. And you just need to work with your vendors and be aware of these dates. That's kind of the moral of the story. So once they were able to have a little more lead time, they were able to get the next shipment out earlier. So the next shipment arrived on the 29th. Carts arrived on the 3rd. This blue one was pretty good. That's what we wanted to have happen. We were just able to get those as soon as the Chromebooks arrived, start cutting them up, getting them in the carts, configuring the carts, running cables, and put them in the trucks, and out they go to the schools. So that one worked really good. In the red group, we had our second challenge. For whatever reason, the Dell shipment here, usually it's a shipment of 37 pallets. For whatever reason, it got divided. 14 came, and 23 got delayed. So we went ahead and we processed those as best we could. We had to rely on our warehouse team to store those extra carts a little longer than they had anticipated. And then we said, hey, go ahead and ship the Amber shipment as soon as you can. And we got the Chromebooks a little bit later and started filling this red shipment of carts with those Chromebooks. So we're adapting. We're making lemonade out of lemons here. Things aren't quite working the way we wanted to, but we're communicating with the warehouse. We're getting things stored and making things happen. We did have both the Chromebooks and the carts arrive on the same day. Luckily, the semis didn't come at the same time, so it worked out okay. We were able to get those, start filling these carts with Chromebooks as well. And then quite a ways away, those final 23 pallets of Chromebooks showed up, and we were able to finish the job. And that's kind of how things look from a receiving aspect. Nothing was done configuration-wise at the warehouse with the Chromebooks. They were simply physically put in the cart. We had the carts labeled and ready to get put out the door.
Before you change, now I do want to point out what a magician that Mark is, because he started on the 5th, and I'd like you to note when he got started doing things planned for ordering the shipment date.
It was fun. It was fun.
I mean, it was a fabulous introduction into the district, but he really jumped in and made a lot of these happen in mere days from starting. So when he makes it look really easy standing up here talking about it, and he made it look really easy while he was doing it. So I don't think he quite got the props in the district that he can, because you understand the scope of what he did.
We had a pizza party. It was a good props. Okay, so from here we're going to go into some of the communications that happened, because as I mentioned in the schedule, things always just don't work. With these large-scale projects, there's just things that change and have to be fluid and on the fly. So some of the resources we used to facilitate good communication throughout this project was Office 365 groups. Where we used that was primarily in the distribution list that comes with Office 365 groups. If you haven't used this, we had a Chromebook deployment distribution list. We had members from the warehouse team on there, TIS management team, and some of the supervisors on TIS and other people that we needed on that list. And things, when shipments got delayed, when things happened, when we needed extra time, when there was going to be more storage needed at the warehouse, we were able to get that out on the distribution list and get everybody informed. We also had a place right there to store files, our plans that I showed you a little snippet of, where we were showing how many Chromebooks, carts, and cabinets were at each school. That was out there. We were able to make that available to administrators as needed. So that was a great tool, a very good collaboration tool. You'd think we use the calendar a lot. That was my thought. We'd schedule all this stuff. But again, things have to flex so much. The communication becomes more important than what's on the calendar. So that was key. We also used Yammer. And that was primarily in the technology department. With the schedules changing, shipments kind of being fluid, during this 14 days, our department basically knew, hey, Chromebook deployment is happening, and you may need to get pulled off because we have Chromebooks that have arrived at the warehouse. We need to go to the warehouse and process them. Like I said, we needed about 25, 30 folks to have our peak efficiency for processing at the warehouse. So I would send out Yammer posts saying, hey, Chromebooks arrived. We've got the carts ready to go. We're going to start at 8 o'clock tomorrow with processing. So come one, come all kind of thing. Then I'd send, after we finished our a phase of processing, like after we finished the green section or the blue section, I'd send out how many we did, how long it took, just kind of some metrics so people could kind of see how many were left, kind of know where things were at. And everybody had access to those Yammer posts in our department, so it was a good way to let people know what was going on, kind of see the status bar move as we got more towards the end of the project. Especially for those hot days in the warehouse, they could kind of see, okay, well, dang it was hot, but at least we're halfway done now, you know, and they could kind of know that. So that was nice. For the next phase, this is the exciting part. We're gonna pictorially show you how our processing was done inside the warehouse. So no more planning, boring stuff. We'll see some actual pictures of how this happened, and Cindy is going to pilot you through that.
All right. So logistically, it took us a little bit to fine-tune the process, and really it was kind of broken up into two portions, and we just chose simply to go with a line where they just went down this assembly line. Thank you. We're going to deassemble them first and then assemble them on the other side here. But so one thing to talk about is that when he keeps saying 25 to 30 people, that changed all the time. It could be anywhere from supervisors, directors, technicians, or hourly. So a lot of these people you're going to see in here are app devs. Everybody in the department came to help with this project. So the first process, we would show up to the warehouse in the morning, and fortunately our warehouse folks were really fantastic in having the Chromebooks staged for us. So the first section I'm going to go through is just simply the unboxing of the Chromebooks. And you can see that we would take and we'd line up a whole row of Chromebook pallets so that we were ready to start the minute that the team showed up to work there.
Each one of these pallets is 96 Chromebooks, just in case you care. That's just a little G-whiz.
Well, and the question has come to, especially the supervisors in the department, a bunch of different times, why didn't we bulk package? Because 96 per pallet, yeah, trust me, that's a lot of cardboard. But the reason we didn't go for bulk packaging is it was going to cost $45,000 more from Dell to get it in bulk packaging. So this way we could put all of that money into the classroom instead of into not a lot of cardboard.
And you're going to see the cardboard here in a bit. So the very first step in the assembly line was really simply one person's job, and for the most part, each one of these folks eventually kind of found where their niche was and thing they really liked to do for an 8-hour shift in a 100-degree warehouse. And their very first job, and believe it or not, this guy's name is Joe, this was his job that he liked to do, was simply take the Chromebooks off of the pallets and put them on the table. All day long. That's what he wanted to do. Nobody else did, so it was perfect. And we left him alone. We didn't even bug him. Yeah. The next step in the process was to simply just cut the cardboard. And as most all of you know, there's a little tab on those cardboard boxes that is kind of cumbersome. We found that if you simply take your box cutter and cut through that tab, then you can just flip up your top, and they're a lot easier to get into. And technically, Colin and Darren, that's all they did. They cut cardboard. 8 hours in a 100-degree warehouse. So in this picture here, you can see we've gone through, we've opened the box. We had people just taking the Chromebook out of the box and putting it on carts that I'm going to show you here in a moment. And then we had another person in the same box would take out the pigtail and the brick, and those would go into a box. And then we would have another set of folks. All they would do was throw the recycling away. So it was very systematic, and they did that pretty much the whole time unless they really hated it, and then we rotated them through. Most people did not ever want to go to the wiring portion of the carts. They wanted to stay on this portion of the process. So Mark would holler down at me, I need wirers on the carts, and then some unlucky folks would get delegated to go because they never would want
Student
to.
hourly.
Yes.
I did wiring. I don't care.
I know. So, and these folks here on this end, all they did all day long was connect the pigtail to the brick. All day. That's all they did.
So Cheryl right here, her fun job was opening one set of plastic bags. We found that they had a shipping difference between factories. One set of bags you could poke your thumb into and pop it open. The other set you ended up doing kind of like the stretchy band thing. The dumb little things you discover when you process 14,000 of these, you know.
All right, here's one of the carts. We'd simply just do one of these AV carts, load it up. We had a few of these going. We would have one person take them down. They would deliver 36 Chromebooks to each cart along with 36 complete, the pigtail and the bricks to each cart. So that way the folks that were actually doing the wiring, which was the longest process in the whole thing, had all the supplies they would need. And if they needed something else, they would holler at those folks to get it for them if we forgot a pigtail or, you know, whatever. So, cardboard management, waste recycling was a huge issue. 14,000 Chromebooks creates a lot of garbage. So we had to do some improvisation, and these are the Bretford cart boxes that we have converted to garbage cans. And basically just line them with huge garbage sacks, and that's where the little silicone packets went in one, and the plastic went in one, and the cardboard went in one. And so that way it was easy just to get rid of the garbage by pulling it out, dispensing of it, putting a new one in, and just going through it that way instead of having it all into one great big container and then having to sort later. So that we found that saved a lot of time. All right. This is just like a couple hours worth of work here. We started with a 10-yard recycling container that got filled in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And
a lot of fun conversations with the warehouse manager about, yeah, it's full.
Yeah, again, it's full again. And this is all in a day. And we did not have multiple containers, and the company that would pick them up would just come pick it up, take it away, and bring it back. They didn't bring it empty and leave it. And so it was a little bit tricky. And the first day, we did have to do a lot of storage of cardboard at the warehouse until we got it emptied. And we had a small team go back after that and fill it. But then moved to the 40-yard, and that helped some, but we still filled more than one of these in one day of processing. So, yeah, it is what it is. So, cardboard is a challenge. And we really just had folks that just did cardboard all day long, and this is one of our SharePoint admins out here schlucking cardboard. So, and that's what he did all the days. So. I know, we should have built a fort. Speaking of forts, here's a fort of Breadfruit carts. So Mark talked about in the warehouse where we did some staging where we really weren't allowed to go. And he talked about carts being delivered before Chromebooks. So we had to have a place to leave those. And this is one shipment of the Breadfruit carts, all staged and ready to go, waiting for magical Chromebooks to arrive to be filled.
This was a key part of the planning process when we realized that these carts could be stacked. Yay, the carts could be stacked. I can remember the Breadfruit rep sending me a picture of the carts stacked, and we're like, oh, that's going to make everything possible.
Yeah. And thank goodness, they were able to use the forklift and get them down for us, and they delivered all these. Because this, like I said, this wasn't a part of the warehouse where we weren't allowed to really go. And so they would use their forklift. We didn't have to move them all manually over into the staging area. So this is kind of a look down. So the first long look there was just the Chromebook unpackaging portion. This is now the cart wiring portion. So it kind of broke it up into two areas just to make it a little more smooth and flowing. And we put 2 people on every single cart, one in the front where it would do the end wiring, and then one putting the bricks in and plugging into the power and snaking through to the second person. And I'll show you some close-ups here. And we were trying to be nice and put cardboard on the cement floor, because eventually, as they got towards the bottom of these carts, they were sitting on the floor or laying on their backs trying to get those snaked in there. So we made sure to make it a little bit easier for them. And you can see we've, in this guy here, those are the boxes off the top of the Breadfruit carts when you get them that we just reused to take the power to the carts. So you would just take that, and then when it was empty, they'd get it, refill it, take it to the next cart. So we were kind of trying to reuse and make things a little bit easier on ourselves. So we'd have this is example here of the folks doing the power portion of the cart. And poor Karen here, your fingers really started to bleed after a while doing this process here. And then here's one of our app devs down here doing wiring, and everybody was on their backs and getting in the nooks and crannies down here. And then this is kind of an example of the Anywhere cart that we found that it was easiest just to leave the Breadfruit full carts there and put the Anywhere cart on top, do your wiring, and we did it 2-man, same as with the bigger carts, and then move them off together. So there were a few issues that had to be addressed. Some of the carts came in broken. This one was a pretty minor one where the handle was just broken, and Mark worked with the vendors in order just to get parts, so we were able to do a lot of repairs ourselves and get the carts back into circulation in a timely manner.
And Breadfruit was always good to work with on these repairs. They would send us new carts if that's what made sense. They would send us parts. And I worked with Breadfruit in Alaska as well and found it to be the same. Quick turnaround, good support. So I just wanted to.
And you can talk about this because you were really involved in that.
And so this is a close-up of the wire management here, And what we've been finding is, down below with the green check mark, that's the proper way to do the cable management, where they're going through both little nooks there or hooks. And we would find some people would just try to kind of do it the easier way and go through one hanger. And what that causes, that hanger then, the cord becomes loose and it can go back and forth. So you can end up pulling the cable out of the power outlet from the back and then not being able to have power. Or it just gets, it falls down and becomes tangled and things like that. So it's just, we put this out as a training and put it over in that area where they were doing the cable management so people could just see the proper way to do the cable management. Like was mentioned, we had people that were moving from different stations. Maybe I needed to take somebody that was doing Chromebook processing and bring them over to do the Chromebook carts. So they may not be familiar, but they just look at that picture real quick and see how the proper way was to do the cable management.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes.
How many consumables do you have to like zip ties, like do you guys do Velcro, and what was the design factor in the back of those two devices? Do you think this thing is best for?
Yes. So are you talking about the power cords itself? So on the Dell power cords, there is attached Velcro, and we just used that. And we came out, if you just left it connected as the manufacturer shipped it, and we found that if you did a pull so that it came through 2 times, that was about the right length to be able to power. So you didn't have to undo your, that's a great question. Yeah, we didn't even think to put in here. So that the folks on the power side of those carts knew they pulled 2 winds worth through, and it still stayed tight enough, but it gave enough give to work.
Got enough slack to get it through the
Yeah.
cart.
And don't forget the stickers on the cards too.
Oh. Okay. Nobody invited you. There were. Brentford sends little tiny stickers that you have to assemble as well, and we just added that to the very end. The folks.
That was a bummer too because the demo had the numbers actually kind of etched in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we got them. And
We didn't know they were stickers.
But we have that worked into the quality check at the end. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Nope. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. That's a whole nother beast.
That was a really healthy discussion that we had in the office. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were trying to get them out of the warehouse to the school.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
We were also receiving 35 book per school site curriculum implementation at the same time this summer. So our warehouse was just like, you're going to do what? Alrighty!
Yeah. We were not their friends at the beginning. Okay. So now once it's gone through its whole assembly process and they're 100% complete, we did have one gentleman who never changed jobs the entire time, and that was quality control. And so all he did was check these cards to make sure they had their stickers, they were wired properly, and that they had all 36 of their Chromebooks. Once that was done, he had the master list of how many carts each school was going to get and what truck delivery schedule we were working on for that day. And he made sure that you can see on the top, these are completed Chromebooks. This is one delivery. And you can see on top here, those are simply just white pieces of paper with the name of the school it's going to. And it was his job to make sure that we had enough and not more than for each school that they were going to, as well as making sure that he got them all labeled. So we had some of our high schools got 20 carts, and we couldn't just give them 20 blank carts, and they would never know how to check them out or move them around their school. So we numbered them for them. You can see here we have the 136, so that's just an example. So when they check out a Chromebook cart from their library, they check out Chromebook cart number 1 or number 3 or whatnot. And then the additional information on the sides of those carts is really critical piece, but I don't want to take Cindy's thunder, so I'm going to leave that until a little bit later in our conversation here. So we had some facility folks that were really impressed with the work we were doing, and she really felt like the schools were not going to get a true understanding of the magnitude of work that we were doing. And so she took pictures and videos and created this video for the school district to watch when they came back from school. And so we thought maybe you guys might like to see a little bit of what that was here. They worked this fast, really.
There you can see the pallets of Chromebooks.
So that was a very, very brief overview of the entire line, and you saw them all doing that single job. All told, when the warehouse work was done, we had every single person, almost of our entire, 79 team members, with very few exceptions, participate. All the support technicians helped, our developers and programmers, team leads, network communications analysts, our office admins came down, the admin assistants wanted to be part of this. Every supervisor, our assistant director, and our director, everyone participated. We also had 12 student workers and 3 unrecognized college return students on here, representing 10th through 12th graders that were going to get to use these. They thought it was pretty awesome to participate in, as well as our full-time warehouse team helped us. Few statistics of just this really brief portion of the entire project. We processed all of those in 4.5 days. There were 13,563. That was about 376 Chromebooks an hour, which was about 10.44 carts per hour. But we really kicked it, and they were pretty amazed. And pretty much everybody was pretty amazed, including the people that were participating. Some of the opportunities that Mark and I had out of this, however, were not everybody is a ray of sunshine always. And it was hot, dirty, sweaty work that we worked in the schools in the summer. We all know what it's like to wear shorts and sweat through our eyeballs. But it was a different pace than some people were used to working. It was very factory-style assembly line work. So we did have to work very, very hard to manage the mindset and the positivity of some of the more vocal individuals. Who wanted to make sure that we were aware that, if I were doing this, I would have done bulk shipping, and if I were planning this, I would have done this. We said, thank you very much for your insight. We'll put that on the list, and we carried on. So next, I think, Mark, are you going to be talking about how we ship things out, or does Cindy get that one? Oh, is that you?
No, that's the first one's Mark.
The first one's you. Fabulous. Here you go.
Okay, so you saw at the end of the video the Chromebook carts getting pushed into the truck. I know you can't see a lot of the detail here, but I just wanted to show you. This is the overview of our shipping plan. Each one of these little squares is a truckload. 17 truckloads to get all of our Chromebooks out to our schools. So as we look into this a little bit closer, what we did is we organized our shipping based on our Whoa. Sorry. Okay, I'm okay. We organized our shipping based on our high school feeder system. I'm sure a lot of districts organize things based on that. And what that does is that allows us to work in a geographic area because we have the high school, we have all the middle schools that feed the high schools, and all the elementary schools that feed the middle schools. So we organized them all together in our little plan here, and then every Chromebook cabinet cart is in each one of these cells, and we know what truck it's going to go in. You'll see a red line right here, and what that is that's a changeover from between two feeder systems. You know, so this is Sprague High School, this is South High School. We're switching into that feeder system. Just if you look right here, you'll see in each what's in actually each cell, the cart, the cabinet, and the Chromebooks that are going to each school. So that's how it was all organized, and you can see even in a truckload we might be spanning a feeder system. So we just delineated that there and communicated that to the driver like we talked about. We had that last person that would kind of make sure that all that was synced up with the driver. The driver knew where they were going. We had this list printed out at the end of our assembly line so that everybody could be synced up. So that was the delivery. And so here's a little bit more for Cindy.
So, no, it's all good. So as you can see, we have them all loaded in here. And what we chose to do for deliveries is I assigned two sets of tech teams, and we would have them leapfrog each other. So the delivery truck would meet the first set of techs at the first school, and he would just drop them at the front door, whichever door we chose. We kind of communicated ahead of time. We'd have the techs called, let us know what door they would like them delivered to, because we had some logistics to work out there in that we have some multi-level schools without elevators. Yeah, great fun with 36 Chromebooks in a cart. Cool. And so there was some jostling around there. In addition, we really wanted all the Chromebooks to be located centrally in the schools when the techs came back for the last round of the configuring piece of it at the end. But we really wanted them to be centrally located. So I kind of tried to have the same technicians do that process throughout all of the 17 deliveries. And so then the truck would just leave them at the front door with the techs. They would take care of that school while the truck went to the next school, because we tried to do it local, so that there wasn't a whole lot of drive time in between. And then once the first tech team, obviously, then they'd go to the third school. That's kind of how we chose to go with that. So now we can get into a little bit more of your question. The enrollment portion of it, because now they have these bright, shiny devices that they can't do a whole lot with, right? So we, before we even started the process, we kind of had to do some refining of our management portion. Well, so we use device management, and we used to just do it very differently, and we chose to create containers for each school. So we did that prior to the project even starting off, to be prepared there. Oh, whoopsies.
Yeah, and so when we were getting these out to the schools, we did have some Chromebooks that were dead on arrival, and what we worked out with Dell on that was to do an advanced replacement. So we would just be able to, I'd let them know what serial number was having a problem. They would ship me a new Chromebook, and we could swap it out with the dead on arrival Chromebook. Now, that's what we kind of did, but in reality, we had that pool of extra ones, so we would get, anytime there was an issue with the Chromebook, we would get it replaced immediately. But I was doing this this advanced replacement on the side. Now, and one of the challenges with that was it worked pretty good for like the first 2 dozen that we had that happened that way. The last dozen, it started to Dell just not as responsive and kind of, it just didn't work as well. So looking back, it was kind of a lesson learned that we should just define, if we were to do this again, we would define a time where after the first week or two, we're not going to do advanced replacement anymore. We're just going to go to this warranty process, which is kind of the standard operating procedure for any time a laptop is broken or not working or needs to be serviced, needs a part, those kinds of things. So just to define that up front, whereas we just kind of went through it, would be a lesson learned for us on that. And so Cindy's going to talk to you a little bit more about how that warranty process goes.
So then we transitioned into regular warranty processing, and there was another lesson learned. In order to do that, we really needed to get all of our technicians Dell certified for the warranty process for Chromebooks. We had already done that for desktop laptops, and so hurry, do the training so that you can actually process warranties. A really critical piece to that was that we didn't want to have to wait on a warranty replacement to make a Chromebook cart whole in a school. So we took those extra few Chromebooks that you saw that we didn't process in the very beginning, and we used those as fillers and would just backfill our stock as we got those warranty replacements back in. And we are actually still doing that to this day. If we have to process any kind of a claim on any of the Chromebooks, we will just make the school whole and then finish the process and refill our stock. So that way, they have become so dependent on these devices that we don't want to cripple the school by holding their devices and waiting on Dell.
How are you doing on the management side? Because are you just, as you're bringing in the one for the warehouse, you're enrolling in your statement and start tracking like that, so you're taking on another one? Is that what you're doing now?
Yes.
There's a procurement team that takes care of all of your guys' procurement and IT, is that right? Or does IT have their own purchasing team?
Well, that would be our director.
Yeah, we do our purchasing.
Yeah, we do our purchasing.
There's the usual process when you get over a certain price. So the initial purchase has to go through the usual channels.
Yes, but any purchasing decisions go through its technology.
I'm more like the person physically sending in the PO and creating the PO on our end and sending it into the vendor. I didn't know if you guys had been before that, but it sounds like you guys all did that on your own, contacting Dell.
Yeah, once we have the approvals.
Once all the approvals were done, yes. Yes.
Our office manager processes all of the actual money side, POs, accounting, and all of that piece. Our director, he's the one that does most of the contracts and it's the final say on the devices. It's Chords, and his having quality devices is one of his core strategies, so he maintains control of that. And but it's worked out really nicely.
There was another question. Go ahead. We probably only have about 100 left. So we started at about 450, but quite a few of those have been purchased. Schools have wanted to bulk up their inventory. But physically in the office, I keep 25, and then if I run low, then I can just get a few more from the warehouse.
And that's been really nice in that we can oftentimes do a same-day delivery for a new purchase or a next-day delivery, which makes us look pretty darn awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend if you can have a stock that you can sell from, that is a fabulous strategy for improving your customer service ratings.
Yes.
Standard 12-month
standard.
warranty.
Just standard.
That is
Well,
a fabulous conversation that's currently, being done because it's what you've already paid for. The district has a mentality that the staff time is already paid for. We do a little bit of that right now. We'll see what happens as they begin to fall off the warranty train here in the not so far off future. We've actually seen fewer warranty issues than we've actually had vandalism, and so we've had and the schools are handling the incidences of vandalism. It's dropped markedly since the beginning of the year. But
There's a kid out there who has a lot of keys in their pocket.
yeah, ACPEnw keys. I just don't understand.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. We do actually have a plan for sustainability with these that we're going to be continuing to not necessarily augment, but bring in another large batch until we reach essentially a 1 cart per classroom ratio. That's the end division. And so what we're hoping to do is turn these into a sustainable life cycle. And so we don't have them, our goal is to not have them all, kick it at the same time. Seymour?
When you talk about 1 per classroom, do you have power in all of your buildings?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be no problem.
What kind of discussion did you have before ordering extras? Because if they're sitting there, they won't be being used up. And if you still have about 100, that means you have 100 that are going to run out of warranty this summer, and maybe not, some of them not even being used. So what kind of discussion did you have on justifying?
I think the main thing was that the fact that we could immediately replace a Chromebook outweighed the fact that they may warranty expire on the shelf. That level of customer service, for me, outweighed the trade-off of possibly losing the warranty. And remember, even if they're going out of warranty, they've been sitting on a shelf. So, I mean, they should have some good life in them. So.
Yeah, and at 36 DOAs, out of the 14,000,
yeah.
our odds are pretty good. And,
right.
and that really was the conversation, and the conversation before
Good point.
You arrived, those were had.
Yeah. Okay. So, getting back to it, a little bit more communication and training. Now that the Chromebooks are out at the schools and using them, everybody's happy. We did have some issues with that needed to be kind of expectations communicated, and one of them was around the locks. Although we did, put in that little placard on the side of the cart, that instruction card. Hey, teachers, remember, students may try to solder surf and see the combination of the lock, so please safeguard the lock, and put all that instruction on there. It happened. Students were able to find out the combination and gain access to the carts. And so when this happened, we just, again, used Yammer with our office managers and administrators at the schools to communicate the next steps that would happen. They'd put in a ticket. Our technicians would come. They'd not only replace or change the combination on the one cart, but the combination for all carts at the school, so the school would maintain the same combination. That was our direction that we took on that, and so. That's how we communicated that, just in Yammer and other things. We did that way as well. So.
Real quick, just revisiting configuration, I forgot 2 pretty important pieces. So we talked earlier in the very beginning of the presentation that we had improved the number of WAPs in our schools. A real quick lesson learned was we were trying to enroll all of these carts in the libraries mostly on a WAP. We found real quickly that if you distributed your carts a little more equally throughout your school and distributed the weight on those WAPs, it was a lot easier and quicker to deploy them. Not that the infrastructure wasn't there, but it just made it a quicker process. And there was another point, but I don't remember what it is, and we're almost out of time. No, we already did that part, yeah.
Awesome. So in terms of the training, I just want to kind of revisit a couple things that were already mentioned. First of all, wireless had been upgraded, so people are now thinking, well, maybe I can trust that I will be able to do something with the devices in my classroom, in my building, with my staff, however that played out. And the other piece is that we had about 3,000 Chromebooks already in the district. And again, going back to that original, white, red, and green graph, where some buildings were using technology a lot more than others. And so we really leveraged those key components to build these training strategies. And so the first part of that is making sure that we were tying into some key stakeholders, people that were ready to go with their staff, and then also taking advantage of those people that said, Sure, I'll try. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll see what possibilities are there. So again, all of that information to say that's how we came up with these 2 different training options. So we were really listening along the way. So the first one is simply an on-demand. These would be web resources, printed resources, those kinds of things. And then the other one being more of a formalized process. So first of all, just listening. What needs are out there? Now, I am part of an instructional team, and so we relied not only on what we personally knew, but also what teachers or building administrators, or even curriculum directors were sharing with us as what they needed. And tried to make it as job embedded as possible. So Kathy mentioned the adoption of the new curriculum. It happened to be a reading curriculum. That's a fantastic blend. Let's talk about both of those things together. So again, there is a web resource that we regularly just sent people to, and that provided resources around these Chromebooks, Google Apps, assessment options, even kind of extended that as well to include smartboards and iPads and things like that as well. The other piece is we needed to make sure that they had, there's always, all of us have our preferences and propensities for how do we want to learn new information. So looking at a screen sometimes works fantastically. Sometimes there's something really magical about a piece of paper. So making sure that those resources were available as well. And then again, making sure that we were communicating some new tools that we were making available to staff. For example, prior to this deployment, if a student had forgotten their password, whatever, a teacher would have to contact the technology department. We would reset that password. Well, we realized, wait a minute, if you're going to have 42,000 students forgetting their password tomorrow, we probably should have a plan. So having a password reset tool that any staff could access and centrally manage as well. And then in addition to that, yes, please.
Sorry, with the password reset manager, are you guys actually using Google Admin and assigning
No. No, we are not. Yeah, it's a standalone tool that somebody built within our shop. Yeah, absolutely. Love to chat more about that. And then also, the first thought for many people is, great, we have a device that we can get kids test ready. Whether or not, however you land on either side of that fence, we need to communicate how do you use a Chromebook for that purpose, what skills and abilities could you develop because you're using a tool like that, and so forth. So again, really trying to keep it well-rounded. The other piece was a more formalized approach. Now again, as a reminder, we really ran a ramp on this and really were developing things long before these Chromebooks arrived. Everybody knew they were coming. And so as a result, this formalized process of training really kicked in August. It was really, really busy. And so that's where administrators could say, hey, I want you to come and hang out with my staff for the day, for an hour, for a half an hour, whatever that was, and really kind of build in some important details. Another way is for them, because of this web resource, teachers or administrators could use an online tool. There are lots of tools like this. You can book me. We happen to use Calendly because it blends right in with an Outlook calendar. But teachers and administrators can say, I want 30 minutes and I want to talk about assessment options with a Chromebook, maybe some apps that are out there, I don't know. Are you available on Tuesday at 10? It automatically accesses my calendar. I'm available Tuesday at 10. I will absolutely be there to have that conversation. Or perhaps a longer session around another, obviously more lengthy topic, and of course even a 90-minute session, and that would be more of a formalized whole building. So again, these formalized trainings would be one-on-one, maybe small groups, departments, or even whole staff. Our largest training was about 250 high school teachers. That was a blast. So again, just really, and these were all resources that not only did we set up at the beginning, but we maintained and we have continued to add based on need and communicated obvious evidence of things. All right. Oh, and then this included signage. This is another piece that Cindy mentioned earlier on the outside. This was just some important ways for just protocol, right? How do you sign in and out as a student? Now, some teachers, they said, you know what? Juanita's always going to have number 1 because that's what her number is when she's in my class. That's easy. This particular signage or piece of paper isn't necessary. But for those teachers that didn't even think about that process, there's just a visual reminder that perhaps that's something to include. And even, you know, how to carry them. We jokingly say, you know, carry it like a pizza box. You know, kids get that. And even kind of the care and feeding that goes with that. All right. Cindy, I believe, or is that you?
It's me. Okay, it's me. Okay.
And we have that 10 minutes.
Yep. All told, we had all of those get deployed over the course of the year, and then we sold another 376 from the stocks that we had. These were the additional purchases that were made and the additional, I guess, buy-in and enthusiasm in addition to the 3,000 that were already in the district, et cetera. This also, again, brought some new opportunities to our department to help speak with our customers. And one of the things that we've learned through diligent adherence and reading of the ACPE list is we did not want to entertain printing from these Chromebooks. Printing was a no from the beginning. Thank you very much, very much to all of you. And our stance is that we do not support or configure printing for you on your Chromebook device. That said,
I just wanted to add, and that meant that the training team, we were actively talking about why are you printing, what are you trying to accomplish? Oh, I'm just trying to give feedback. Fantastic. Let's talk about additional tools to help that happen. So.
Now, that said, we needed to be very careful about our message because some of, does anybody here have any black and white technicians that work in their area? If you tell them you don't do this, you say, you can't print from a Chromebook. 30 seconds on Google or less than that will prove to you can print from a Chromebook. We're just not going to manage that hot mess of ADHD kittens of print queues. And so we're actively discouraging them from doing this themselves, but we're also not stopping them. And the official response whenever we get an administrator or an English department head or someone saying, but my kids have to print this, that's okay. We've still left PC workstations in all of these schools. There are full labs in every single school. Every single school is required to have one full teaching instructional lab. And so those options are available. All of our teachers are still PC-based workstations. They can email them. The students can share it. If they have to have that piece of paper in their hands, there's a large variety of ways they can get that piece of paper. They're just not going to do it out of a technology-managed print server or print queue from a Chromebook. And we've drawn that very hard line. And people are learning. They're coming along. They're coming along. I imagine this is going to also improve as budgets get hit a little harder next year in Oregon, and paper becomes one of those consumables that maybe they don't have to use anymore. And so this really brings us from, the first year, our 15-16 school year, a lot of schools were adopting these on their own. In our 16-17 school year, as a district, we've really gotten behind Chromebooks. As we move into the 17-18 school year this next summer, I am currently anticipating another fairly large purchase from our district, provided the budget all pans out and the feedback that I've been hearing is the actions and decision that's taken moving forward. There are a wide variety of things we'd repeat, at least in my realm of influence. I would really love to see us repeat the partnerships that we built and the collaborations that this made a tremendous difference in our department, and especially with the technicians and their ability to reach out and work with their peers and their programming peers. It took down some walls, and that was an amazing experience to participate in. We do have some refinement to do. There were still a few people that said, handling cardboard was above their pay grade. You know what? It's really not above anybody's pay grade because it's helping us impact the students at the end. And so we really, really worked on that positive messaging, and so we'll continue to refine that. Mark, I think you had some, or what?
I think we're done.
Yeah, or others. But if you have questions, now is a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yes. You know, the gentleman who manages that just walked in the door.
Yeah, yes, right now we do it manually. We brute force it with people. We go out into the buildings, we enroll everyone, and by hand. So somebody sent something out on ACPE, though, not long ago with...
We have one on order to test.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, we do have that on order to test. Yeah, and if you have any other questions about the management piece of the Google management, gentleman who just walked in back there, raise your hand, David. He's the one that set that all up.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Has there been any talk in your district about staff going?
No, none. So there are principals who have had conversations about maybe getting Chromebooks for staff, but that went away as soon as we got them all carts, because if they think they need mobile devices in a meeting, they roll the Chromebook cart in.
Yeah, so we have not chosen a specific LMS within our district on purpose. So right now, many teachers who are choosing to use an LMS or an almost LMS use Google Classroom or Schoology. So there's a variety, or even Canvas. So there's a variety going on. And right now, we're really happy with the option of that they're asking the question. They're just using the free, so there's no enterprise versions at this point, except for, obviously Google Classroom.
Other questions? Thoughts? We'd like to thank you for
Yes, thank you
spending
very
part of
much.
your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.